Problems with the New King James Bible. Reading 2 Peter chapter 2, verses 1 to 3. But there were false prophets also among the people, even as there shall be false teachers among you, who privily shall bring in damnable heresies, even denying the Lord that bought them, and bring upon themselves swift destruction. And many shall follow their pernicious ways, by reason of whom the way of truth shall be evil spoken of. And through covetousness shall they with feigned words make merchandise of you, whose judgment now of a long time lingereth not, and their damnation slumbereth not. 2 Peter 2 verses 1 to 3. These may seem strong words for the discussion of the New King James Version. I hope they are justified as we proceed. First of all, how the New King James Version differs from most other modern Bibles. It has been my conviction for decades that the King James Bible will never be improved in either accuracy or power. In consequence, I hold it to be perfect. It is my final authority for the truth of God. Most of the changes in most modern Bibles are on the authority of a minority of Greek manuscripts, which the KJV translators were aware of, but rejected. The NKJV claims, and appears to me at least, to be different. The changes are not so much because of manuscript variation, but because of different translations of the same Greek words behind the 1611 text of the KJV. Many of the translation choices in the New King James Version actually follow the texts of modern Bibles, where they also agree with the KJV Greek. I'm going to give you here 7 translation choices which have significant and sometimes serious effect upon the old KJV Protestant doctrines. May I clarify that again before we begin? The 2 chief sources of changes to Bibles are 1. What the manuscripts say when they differ, and 2. How words are translated when the manuscripts agree. Modern Bibles major, as I say, on a few manuscripts which were rejected by the KJV translators. You will be told they didn't know about them. There were very few comparatively that did not know about. They knew the principal readings, but that's for another day. New King James Version departures from the King James Version are translation changes. It is well to be aware that most of the translation changes in the New King James Version are the same as those made in modern Bibles. Some important historical background. The most significant break in the use of the KJV 1611 took place in England in 1881 with the publication of the Revised Version New Testament and the Old Testament later on in 1885. What might not be so well known is that this happened in the midst of a move back to Romanism by many priests in the Church of England. This move was called the Oxford Movement. It was also called the Tractarian Movement, and some people refer to it as Puseyism. But Oxford Movement is probably the most common title of it. The chief mover of this was John Henry Newman, who converted to Rome in 1845, late one rainy night, falling at the feet of a Roman Catholic priest and begging him to hear his confession. The 2 key men responsible for the Revised Version were Westcott and Hort. They were both admirers of Newman, and judging by their biographies written by their sons, were actually unbelievers while holding offices in the Church of England. The translation committee for the Revised Version comprised in all 25 men, including a Unitarian, and many of them were known to favour the Oxford movement, and that is why I read to you from 2 Peter. There were false prophets also among the people, even as there shall be false teachers among you, who privily shall bring in damnable heresies, even denying the Lord that bought them, which Westcott and Hort did. They denied a penal substitutionary atonement of the death of Christ. And Peter continues, and bringing upon themselves swift destruction, and many shall follow their pernicious ways, and they still are, which is why I'm making this recording. It's important that I mention the Revised Version of 1881 because the changes still remaining in modern Bibles, including the 7 I will give from the New King James Version today, were snuck in the Revised Version. 7 notable changes then in the New King James Version. Of 7 words which are frequently altered in the New King James, I plan to address 3 on this occasion, and then, if the Lord will, in a subsequent message, the remaining 4. Turning to the first one, the word converted, convert and converteth occurs 10 times in the King James 1611 New Testament. On 7 of those 10 occasions, converted is changed to turn in the New King James Version. This is very significant doctrinally, as be converted is passive and suggests a response to God, but turn is active and makes the turner himself responsible. I will list all 10 of these references in a moment, but here I will read aloud just 3 for the sake of brevity. First of all, Matthew 13:15, King James 16:11, just the last half of a long verse. Lest any time they should see with their eyes and hear with their ears, and should understand with their heart, and should be converted, and I should heal them. Now the New King James, Matthew 13:15, again the last half. Lest they should see with their eyes and hear with their ears, lest they should understand with their heart and turn, so that I should heal them. King James 16:11, Mark 4 verse 12, second half of the verse. Lest at any time they should be converted and their sins should be forgiven them. And now in the New King James, the same verse, Mark 4:12, lest they should turn and their sins be forgiven them. King James 16:11, Luke 22:32, but I have prayed for thee that thy faith fail not, and when thou art converted, strengthen thy brethren. The King James, in the same place, Luke 22:32, the New King James, I beg your pardon, but I have prayed for you that your faith should not fail, and when you have returned to me, strengthen your brethren. I trust it was clear there that be converted in the King James 1611 has been changed to turn in the New King James. I will read to you now just 1 or 2 comments that were made from writers who were contemporary with the 1881 first appearance of these changes. English lawyer Homersham Cox, 1821 to 1897, wrote to the Church Times after the publishing of the RV, quote, "The change seems to me one of incalculable importance. The former version, 1611, teaches men that they are converted by a power external to themselves. The later version, RV 1881, teaches them to turn themselves. In other words, the doctrine of superhuman conversion disappears from the New Testament, and thus the main foundation of modern evangelicalism is destroyed." Dr. W. Milligan, Professor of Divinity at Aberdeen, who was a member of the Revised Version Committee, wrote concerning the change, quote, "The popular error of men being mere passive instruments in the hands of God are thereby exploded," unquote. Benjamin Wilkinson, who was a Seventh-day Adventist, nevertheless writing in support of the KJV about 50 years later, writes in his book Our Authorized Bible Vindicated, quote, "The dangerous doctrine of salvation by our own effort is exalted, and the medical saving power of God in conversion, so far as these texts are concerned, is thrust out of the New Testament," unquote. The 4 other places of the 7 where converted is changed to turn in the NKJV are James 5:19, and 20, John 12:40, and Acts 28:27. The three which are unmolested in the NKJV, that is, read the same as the AV, are Matthew 18:3, Acts 3:19, and Acts 15:3. We come to our second word. The second of the 7 translation changes we're going to look at concerns the word hell. There are at least 5 Greek words in the New Testament for the afterlife, not counting heaven. How these are translated will be determined by one's skill in Old Testament Hebrew, New Testament Greek, and one's knowledge of ancient writers. Whether those ancient writers were godly or ungodly would certainly affect their ideas about hell, just as it does today. I do, however, as a KJV believer, believe that the AV translators were far better informed about the true meaning of Greek words than any team of Bible translators since, and I don't think any modern Bible promoter could prove otherwise. Of the 23 words translated hell in the KJV 1611 New Testament, 13 say Gehenna and 10 say Hades. That is to say, there are 23 Greek words in the KJV translated hell. And those words are Gehenna 13 times and Hades 10 times in the Greek text used for both the translations. Those 10 references are left untranslated in the New King James Version. So the English NKJV text 10 times says Hades, where the King James says hell. I'll give you 4 examples. Matthew 11:23. And you, Capernaum, who art exalted to heaven, will be brought down to Hades. This is NKJV. Matthew 16:18, where Jesus responds to Peter's great confession of his deity. And I also say to you that you are Peter, and on this rock I will build my church, and the gates of Hades shall not prevail against it. Luke 16:23, NKJV again, the story of the rich man and Lazarus. And being in torments in Hades, he lifted up his eyes and saw Abraham afar off, and Lazarus in his bosom. And finally, Acts 2:27, for you will not leave my soul in Hades, nor will you allow your Holy One to see corruption. It also so happens that the same 10 references to Hades were left untranslated in the Revised Version of Westcott and Hort in 1881. You might say, well, yes, of course, because Hades was the Greek, but the point I'm making is they were untranslated there as well as they are untranslated in the NKJV. Both these men, Westcott and Hort, had heretical views about eternal punishment, believing in intermediate resting places after death, including purgatory. Ancient Greeks like Aeschylus, theologians like Origen, and 19th century Luciferian Helena Blavatsky believed that Hades was not a place of punishment. Hort's biography says that he believed that purgatory was a great and important truth. Westcott said that Hades is, quote, the common abode of departed spirits, unquote. The rich man in Luke 16 is said in the Authorised Version to be in hell, and in the NKJV to be in Hades. He said to Abraham, I am tormented in this flame. Even if you leave Hades untranslated, it doesn't sound like the painless place Westcott and Hort appeared to think it is. Nor many of their Romanising contemporaries, I hasten to add. Because modern Bibles generally, and the NKJV to a degree, still follow Westcott and Hort in many of their translations changes, what was said by others when the RV appeared is often equally true today. One of the contemporaries that came at the time of the RV was Dr. Samuel Cox. He was a Universalist, that is, he believed all men would be saved. He believed, like Westcott and Hort, in intermediate stages after death of rest and progress before the final judgment. He wrote after the publication of the Revised Version, quote, "The states of being showed forth by the words Gehenna, Paradise, Hades, cannot therefore be final or everlasting, but only intermediate conditions, states of discipline in which the souls of men await and may be prepared for their final award. This is why it is strongly likely that Hades was not translated as hell in the NKJV." Another word which has been altered in the NKJV, my third and last on this occasion, where there is no disagreement among Greek manuscripts, is the word world. The underlying Greek word ion appears in the AV 1611 New Testament 41 times. In the NKJV it is translated as world only 10 times and age 31 times. So the change is from world in the AV to age in the NKJV. Of the 41 times that world appears in the Authorised Version 1611, 31 of those times it's translated as age and only 10 times as world. The change in 31 places from world to age is cause for serious concern in view of the New Age movement and Eastern religious thought. 19th century Luciferian Helena Blavatsky wrote, quote, "Both Jesus and John the Baptist preached the end of the age. So little did the uninitiated Christians understand that they accepted the words of Jesus literally and firmly believed he meant the end of the world," unquote. So here's a prominent Satan worshipper from the 19th century saying that the correct word for world should be age. The Eastern religions teach the notion of great time cycles or ages. Evolution and reincarnation are facets of this. Vast ages of time are improving mankind, they say. Brooke Foss Westcott, who was a key factor in the 1881 Revised Version, also believed in these evolving ages. Gail Riplinger quotes him thus, quote, this is Westcott, quote, "Each new element returns to its source as the great cycle finds fulfillment," unquote. And again, quote, "So things come into existence and then are dissolved as the great cycle proceeds," unquote. And again, Westcott, quote, "All things come from God and go to God, from God to God, worlds great of worlds, and directs the cyclic periods." So wrote Brooke Foss Westcott. Here again, the New King James Version makes changes in tune with the heretical views which were first greatly popularised in the Revised Version of 1881. There are also 32 times when the Revised Version changed from world to age, and these closely match the 31 changes made in the New King James Version, but most of them in the RV are marginal notes. Hort had a reputation for fearless changes from the AV, but it appears that even from him the departures on this matter were more tentative. As is often so, today's marginal note becomes tomorrow's text, or it disappears altogether. Among the texts then altered from world in the AV 1611 to age in the New King James Version are the following. I'll give you 4 samples here. Matthew 12:32 in the 1611. "And whosoever speaketh a word against the Son of Man, it shall be forgiven him. But whosoever speaketh against the Holy Ghost, it shall not be forgiven him, neither in this world, neither in the world to come." The NKJV in this place reads, "It will not be forgiven him either in this age or in the age to come." Matthew 28:20, 16:11, teaching them to observe all things whatsoever I have commanded you, and lo, I am with you always, even unto the end of the world. Amen. The NKJV in this place reads, I am with you always, even to the end of the age. Amen. Luke 18:30, 16:11, who shall not receive manifold more in this present time, and in the world to come life everlasting. And the NKJV, who shall not receive many times more in his present time, and in the age to come everlasting life. Ephesians 6:12, 16:11, against the rulers of the darkness of this world. The NKJV reads, against the rulers of the darkness of this age. And so the New King James Version replaces world with age approximately another 27 times in the New Testament, and these I've given are just a sample. When the Revised Version was published in 1881, there were many Anglican ministers and others who were irritated by the pedantry of the translation. Such pedantry, I believe, caused a distinction in the RV between world and age. As we have seen, the same departures have been made in the NKJV. Their pedantic approach spoiled the ease of reading of such passages as the end of 1 Corinthians chapter 1, the beginning of 1 Corinthians chapter 2. What appeared like pedantry to their contemporaries was compounded by a deliberate doctrinal bias. And to close, one of the most helpful books for understanding these changes is called New Age Bible Versions by Gail Ripplinger. Do not be put off by the kind of scorn poured upon her by Dr. James White and others. Dr. White appears to me in many of his videos criticising KJV-only believers to spend a good measure of his time just pouring scorn on us. And then, I'm not to say he never has any facts to state, but the weight of most of what he says is laughter and scorn. Check his videos and see whether I'm telling you the truth. Ripplinger, in fact, presents a great many facts in her very useful book, New Age Bible Versions. I'm sure there are good men using the New King James Version in the pulpits, but I fear their ministries will, more or less, suffer for it. If the Lord will, then, I hope very soon to produce a follow-up to this message and point out some more serious translation changes in the New King James Version of the Bible. Lord bless.